Imagine you have become a leader of a newly independent country and you have finished giving an inspirational speech to your citizens.
But at the end, you know that there are some problems that are looming in the background of this celebration and happiness. There are several people who are leaving their homes immediately and they are trying to enter your country as refugees. Then it is also the problem regarding some rulers that are not convinced regarding joining their regions within your country. Okay. Another problem is the violent riots that are taking place between different communities inside your country. And in order to solve these problems, you do not even have an efficient administrative system. Given all these situations, how would you feel as a leader? It is hard to imagine, right? But what if I tell you that this is exactly what India was like at the time of independence in 1947? Independence for us just wasn't enough. We needed to build a nation. And that is what we are going to learn about in this chapter regarding the challenges that our leaders had faced in order to build a nation out of British India. Because British India was the area that Britishers were ruling. Before that, it was Mughals for us. How are we going to build a nation now that we are independent? This was the challenge. So, when India had received its independence, the very first thing that the leaders, all of the leaders, no matter what ideology they belonged to, okay, all of them had agreed on one thing, and that was that there would be two goals that independent India would be trying to achieve. The very first goal would be running the country through democratic government. They wanted a democratic government to run the country so that everybody's aspirations, their problems, they could be heard by the government. Okay. And in relation to this only, it was also agreed as one of the goals that the country will be run for the good of all. It is not going to be that only a certain section of the society is going to get benefited by the government. So it was decided that if poor people and socially disadvantaged people are there in the country, our main focus would be to uplift them, okay, so that they can be brought to the same level as other people, because they have been deprived of the basic things for a long period of time. So if we will be able to bring them up, then only we will be able to ensure that yes, the country is running for the good of all. Then, in order to achieve these two goals, the leaders of the nation and the government, at that time, elections hadn't taken place. So the Britishers had just left, and within the Congress, it was decided that okay, these people are going to take these kind of positions. So it was decided that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel will take the position of Deputy Prime Minister and the Home Minister, and Jawaharlal Nehru would become the Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister. So yeah, it was decided that once things get stabilized, we will run the election for the country for people to choose who is to become what and which party would form the government. Until then, in order to stabilize the situation, we will have an interim government. Okay, so the interim government, it faced three challenges. The first challenge was to accommodate the diversity that was existing at that time in the country. India is still a very diverse country in terms of the kind of languages people speak, different lifestyles, different food habits, all of it, right? So how were they going to accommodate that diversity? There were Hindus living in the country, there were Muslims living in country, and people of all other religions were also there. Okay, people of different castes, people of different regions were living in there. So how are they going to manage all these differences? How are they going to integrate all the territories so that they can have this idea that okay, this landmass and this area comes under India. And once they have decided on the geography that okay, if these areas come under India, these are my responsibility. I would do my best to create development in here. Okay, and then only we would be able to build what? A unified nation. All right. The second challenge was to set up democracy. Just like we discussed in the goals, one goal was to run a democratic government in the country. So, if people have always been under authoritarian regimes, even if not always, most of the times they have been under authoritarian regimes, then how are we going to set up democracy? How are we going to introduce democracy? Okay, that was the challenge. So they decided that we will build a constitution which will act as a rule book for the government, and it will also act as a rule book regarding how the citizens have to act in the country. Okay, but making that constitution would not be enough, because the constitution should align with the democratic practices. Okay, so we need to make it in alignment with the democratic practices. It cannot be that we are just preaching good things in the constitution, while in practice we are not actually following the democratic principles, like holding elections at the right time, and making those elections free and fair, allowing people from different communities to contest elections or to have a vote, those things, right? Then the third challenge was planning and development. How are we going to ensure the development of all sections of the society? Again, the second goal. How are we going to ensure that only the well established sections are not the ones who are developing? How are we going to balance that? Okay, we are focusing on the development of the poor and socially disadvantaged people, but the people who, let's say, who are considered already well versed, they don't think that the government is ignoring their interests. How are we going to balance all of that, so that we are able to fulfill welfare goals that are mentioned in the DPSP? DPSP is what? Directive Principles of State Policy. If you remember, DPSP is that section of the constitution where the constitution says that, okay, governments, if you do not have the time right now to do something, probably in the future, when you get the time, when you think the situations and conditions of the country is right, you can implement these welfare goals. But it is on to you. Okay, there is no absolute pressure on you that you have to implement them. Okay, so the interim government at that time was thinking that, okay, we also have to fulfill the welfare goals that are mentioned in DPSP, and so that what happens, so that the development of all sections of the society is ensured. Fine. They didn't want it to just get wrapped up in all the problems that they are facing. They also wanted to be optimistic about how we are going to ensure the development as well, not just focus on this issue of accommodating diversity, which was very huge at that time. This was the biggest issue. You will be able to understand that deeper in this chapter, okay, as we go forward. Then, as I told you that the accommodating diversity is the biggest part, it was the biggest challenge. Let's now look at why that problem became this big. Okay, so for that we first have to look at something called the two nation theory. Okay, the two nation theory was a theory that was introduced, or we can say advanced, by Muslim League. So Muslim League used to believe that India consists of two people. Two people here means two groups of people. So one of those are Hindus and the others are Muslims. And then they thought that these two groups, they are fundamentally different. There is nothing that is common between them. So it is impossible for them to coexist peacefully. That is why they cannot coexist in the same area, in the same country. Then they said that right now Congress is the party that is is very popular amongst the masses, and main leaders of the Congress, who are they? Mostly they are Hindus. Gandhi is a Hindu, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is a Hindu, Jawaharlal Nehru himself is a Hindu. So these were the kind of theories that they were propagating amongst the masses, that main leaders of the Congress are Hindus. So once they form the government after India gets independent, So do you think the interests of Muslim population would be saved by the government of a country that is mostly run by Hindu leaders? This was the kind of propaganda that they had spread in the minds of innocent people of India. Fine. And the reason being why they were doing this thing was very clear. They wanted power. Okay. They knew that if Congress is the more popular party, we wouldn't be able to have the power. So what if we try to, mobilize the masses, try to spread hate amongst the two communities that are living in India, so that we are able to create a different nation, and also that different nation would need a government. So we would be the ones who would be running the government in that nation. So with this theory of theirs, that we will protect the interests of Muslim population, that's why we want Pakistan. This is the demand that they had kept. ML here refers to Muslim League. Okay, so I have written ML in short. Of course Congress opposed it, because this is not just about the political competition that was existing between Congress and Muslim League, that Congress wanted to just remain people's favorite. It was also about morality, because even when you are studying about it, this idea feels quite baseless, right? That how can you say that Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist? So yeah, and also in Congress there were many Muslim leaders. So this is quite baseless that Hindus and Muslims cannot work together, cannot live together. So Congress opposed it, but because the Britishers were the ruling people, and there was a growing competition between Congress and Muslim League, the demand for a separate nation called Pakistan was eventually accepted. Okay. So what the growing competition here means is that this is not very necessary in regards to your examination, but like just to make this topic clear, I just wanted to give you a context. So Britishers, they didn't wanted Indians to get really angry at them. They wanted to prolong their rule in India. So for that to happen, if they completely ignore the demands of Indian people, then of course they will get forced to leave India early. But if they get into negotiations, accept few demands and deny other demands, then they would be able to hold their grip over India for more period of time. So what was happening here was that Britishers came up with the idea. They were conducting elections at smaller level seats, okay? And on these elections, the two parties that were mainly contesting each other were Congress and Muslim League. So as Congress and Muslim League were becoming two main contenders in those elections, the influence of Muslim League was also increasing in India. So this is why when earlier Congress used to be the main party, whether it is Hindus or Muslims, everybody would get inclined towards Congress. But now Muslim League is saying that we are going to protect the interests of Muslim population. So several people, several innocent people, they actually got convinced by Muslim League. So they were supporting Muslim League in that way. Next, we move on to the problems and process of partition. Now, it was decided that this British India, the entire British India that you can see on the map, it would be divided into two countries, and that division was called partition. Okay. So it was decided by those people that partition would take place based on the idea of religious majority. What that means is that it would depend on how many Muslims or how many non-Muslims are living in a particular area. Okay, if in a particular area the majority of the population is Muslims, then that part would go with Pakistan, and if in an area the majority population is non-Muslim, then that part would go with India. Okay. Now we will see the kind of problems that were happening at that time. First of all, let me tell you that this process of partition was a very unsystematic, very unorganized idea. Okay, everything was just done in a great hurry. Okay, it was decided that transfer of population would not take place. India said that it is going to be a safe space for people of every religion. It was decided that it is not going to be that if Pakistan is for Muslims, all the Muslims from India would be sent to Pakistan, and all the Hindus and Sikhs who are living in Pakistan's area, they would be sent to India. It was not like that, okay? But still people migrated, and you would know why in the next sections, okay? So the first problem was that there was no single belt where Muslim majority population was residing. Okay, it wasn't that in one big of a mass the Muslim majority population is the one who is only residing. Okay, and the other side is where non-Muslims are residing. It wasn't like that. This is the reason why there were two belts where the Muslim majority population were residing. One was on the west and the another was in the east. I have also marked those for you, okay, that you can understand. And the problem here was that they could not connect with each other through land because they were divided by a Indian mainland. As you can see, between this West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which we now call Bangladesh, okay, there is a huge Indian landmass. So the only way by which they could get connected with each other was through sea, was through water. Okay, then the second problem was that not all Muslim majority areas wanted to join Pakistan. As I told you that even in Congress there were Muslim leaders. Yeah, so one example was of Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He was also known as Frontier Gandhi. You can expect a question regarding him, that in one markers, that who was called Frontier Gandhi, then you might be able to answer that. Fine. So he was the leader who was leading this part that I'm marking for you, Northwest Frontier Province. As you can see, it neighbors present day Afghanistan. So, as I told you that not all Muslim people in India also wanted to join Pakistan, same case was with people living in the Northwest Frontier Province. They wanted all of those parts to remain India only. They didn't wanted a partition. They didn't wanted a Pakistan. Okay. So the people of Northwest Frontier Province and their leader, they didn't wanted to join Pakistan. Fine. But what happened was that because there is no way by which Northwest Frontier Province could be joined with India, as you can see, right now in this map, this is a undivided British India. That is why you are able to see this big of a Punjab. But in reality, like if we see the map of India now, we have a very small Punjab. Why? Because a bigger chunk of Punjab went with Pakistan after partition. So if the Punjab area is coming in between, then how can Northwest Frontier Province get connected with India? It cannot, right? That is why, for administrative reasons, it was later decided that it doesn't matter what the people want, we will just make this area a part of Pakistan only. That is why it was later forcefully merged with Pakistan, and the leader, Abdul Ghaffar Khan, he was arrested as well. Okay. Then the third problem was that if you see these areas, Punjab and Bengal, they had vast areas inside them where the non-Muslims were in majority. And at that time it was sort of a false promise, I would say, because they were saying that okay, if these are the areas where the non-Muslims are in majority, then of course we cannot send them to Pakistan, right? So we would bifurcate it at a district level, but that could never happen because of the same case with Northwest Frontier Province. If we have a small region in Punjab area, in this side of Punjab area, where the non-Muslims are in majority, is there any way by which it can connect with India's Punjab? It cannot. Why? Because this area is completely surrounded by Pakistan's Punjab. So of course, for administrative reason, it would be later sent to Pakistan only, right? So these were some false promises that could never get fulfilled. So now we'll look at what kind of consequences that the people had to face. Okay, no matter on which side they were, whether they were Muslims, whether they were Hindus, whether they were Sikhs, whatever religion they were of, what were the kind of consequences that they faced? Because here the focus is going to be on humanity, on humans, not on which religion these people belong to. Okay, so this is going to be a little sensitive topic, so try to see it in a analytical lens, I would say, so that you do not get overwhelmed. Fine. This is the dark reality of our history, but this is the reason why we study social science. If you would not see the goodness and the darkness in our history, or in our just surroundings in human nature, then we would never be able to solve those things, right? So let's just get into the consequences together. So the very first thing that was quite expected was large scale violence in communal rights. So of course, when the Muslim League was trying to spread hatred between Hindus and Muslims, then it was very natural for people to engage in communal rights. But what was unprecedented, meaning what was unexpected, was the scale. No government, no administration, and even the common people, they had never thought that this would be the scale, this would be the height of communal violence in the country. Okay, communal violence is the violence that happens between religious groups. Okay, that is what we call communal violence. So it broke out across both sides of the border. So it was taking place in Pakistan as well, it was taking place in India as well. So around 5 to 10 lakh people were killed in this violence, okay, on both sides of the border. We are not just talking about India, okay. Then people, apart from killing people, people were also attacked while they were trying to cross the borders. Now I would like to, bring to your notice, I would like you to recall what I had told you earlier. I had told you in the process of partition that it was decided that transfer of population would not happen. All Muslims wouldn't be sent to Pakistan, all non-Muslims wouldn't be sent to India. But even though that was not decided, people, in trying to save the life of themselves or their family members, they were crossing the borders. Okay, the non-Muslims, they were trying to cross the border and enter India from those regions where they were living with their family for centuries. Okay, why? Because they were very desperate to save their lives, because there were angry mobs who would come and attack them, or burn their houses. Those things were happening. So even though it was unexpected, even though it was decided that transfer of population wouldn't take place, people, in order to save themselves, were migrating from one border to another. Then cities like Lahore is now a major city in Pakistan. Okay, and Amritsar and Kolkata, thankfully, they are still with us. So these were the three main cities that became the communal zones. Mainly, what that means is that the most of the violence was recorded in these cities. Now, if you will look at their geography, I had earlier told you that um, Punjab and Bengal, they saw, it was decided that the non-Muslim majority areas that are situated in Punjab and Bengal, they would be bifurcated at district levels. But because they were not bifurcated, there was lots of confusion regarding which area amongst these areas would lie in India and which area would go to Pakistan. So that's why Lahore and Amritsar both were the main cities in the Punjab area of undivided India. Okay, and Kolkata was where, in Bengal part. So they became the communal zones. So even if those violence were happening in India or the parts of Pakistan, the administration was trying their best to stop it. But when lots of people are angry, when there are big mobs of people who are angry, and there are few policemen, there are few bureaucrats, how much control would those policemen and bureaucrats would be able to have on this big group of people, right? So that's why it was exceeding all the expectations. Then the second consequence was mass migration. As I told you, that in order to save their lives, around 80 lakh people were forced. Focus on this word, I am saying the word forced. They were not willingly migrating, but their circumstances made them to migrate across the borders. Okay, one of the largest and most unplanned population transfers in human history, because it was decided that population transfer won't take place, but because of this unexpected violence, it did took place, not on the government's part but onto the people's part. Then millions abandoned their homes and they had to live in refugee camps for months or years. Because if they are leaving their homes, it is not going to be that, if they are migrating to India or Pakistan, almost instantly they will be able to find new homes, right? So that's when they had to live in refugee camps, sometimes for months if they are able to find a home, and sometimes for years if they are not able to find one, right? Then many families, they were forced to vacate their homes within a few hours notice. Fine. So if administration knows that okay, this particular area, it is it is now going to be a part of Pakistan, or even if it is not about that, even if in particular region they know that the people, they are quite angry against the people of other religion that are living in this area, so they might attack these people. So what they would do is they would tell the people through notices that it would be better for you to vacate your houses and move across the border in order to save your life, because we might not be able to control this many angry people. Fine. Then it was the minority question. Hindus and Sikhs were minorities in Pakistan, okay, and Muslims were the minorities in India. So because they were minorities, they were in lesser number, they became vulnerable. They were the ones who were mostly attacked. They were the ones who were mostly killed, right? So the communities that had lived in these regions for generations were now just seen as undesirable aliens in their own homeland. So this line is a little poetic, so let me just decode it for you. Undesirable aliens meaning that they became foreigner in their own homeland. So they were living in those areas for years, for centuries. So they were now just seen as undesirable aliens. Fine. They were not, they were seen as unwanted people. People of that area, the religious majority of that area, wanted them to go away. Fine. Then the local administration and police often failed to provide adequate protection. The police was also not able to protect them completely. Yeah. And then the biggest issue was the impact on women. Whenever violence occurs between two groups, doesn't necessarily have to be religious groups, any groups, okay? Whenever wars have happened, it was the women who were impacted the most. So even during the time of partition as well, thousands of women were abducted. What abduction means is that they were kidnapped. They were just picked out from their houses, they got separated from their family, and the people who were of the other religion, bad people, they kidnapped them, they raped them, and they forcibly converted them to the religion of the abductor. Abductor is the person who had kidnapped that woman. So many of these women, they were forced to even marry with their abductor. Sometimes they would be just raped and killed. Sometimes they would be converted as well and then married to the abductor. So those things were happening as well on both sides of the borders again. Also, in some cases, women were killed by their own families, because even now there is a issue of associating the family's izzat, or let's say honor, with the woman. So many families were killing their own daughters. Why? So that nobody, the abductor from another religion, kidnaps them or rapes them or anything. Fine. Then, violence against women was often used to intimidate and humiliate the opposing community. Now, I'm saying that women became the target of this kind of violence. But why is it happening? There is a psychological reason behind it. So these people think that the more violent and cruel we would be towards the woman of other religion, the more we would be able to intimidate, meaning we would be able to spread fear in the minds of people belonging to the other religion, so that what happens? They obey us, they fear us, and we can dominate them or we can humiliate them, embarrass them. Okay. Then it was the administrative and political challenges. See, I am writing the subheadings and headings for you, so that when you are attempting your answers in the exam as well, you are going to mention your answers in this manner. I mean, it is not a forceful regulation on my part. I'm not forcing anything onto you, but it would be helpful for you, because um, when you would be writing your answers, if you present them in a helpful manner, the examiner would be able to clearly see things about what you are writing. Fine. So in that manner, if you create ease for them, they might, give you better marks. Because at the end of the day, your examiner is also very tired because they have to check so many papers. So it's a human element as well. If everything is just cramped, if there are no headings or subheadings properly, if you're not underlining things well, then they might not be able to decode what you are trying to write, and the more effort they will have to place in reading your answers, so that might irritate them. Fine. Of course, this is, I think, a really bad thing that they are not objectively checking your answer papers, but this is what our country has made it, right? That teachers are pushed to check so many papers. Because of that, the papers that they are checking, they are not really able to check them properly. They are just in a hurry to check a lot of papers within one day. So that is why I would just say that you focus on your own survival, you focus on getting better marks, okay, along with having a greater understanding of the concepts that you are learning here. Fine. So I would not recommend rote memorization to you. That is the reason why I'm trying to, build a YouTube channel that actually facilitates learning. But then we also have to agree that we need our marks so that we can get our degrees later, and then we can get our jobs, etc. So now the government employees, the financial assets, and the public institutions, they were also have to be divided. Earlier it was British India. So all regions, when they were belonging to British India, then the division was not needed. But like, if areas are to be divided, then we will have to divide how many government employees would work in that particular area. Fine. So along with that, we will also have to divide the public institutions, like these many courts will go to this area in Pakistan, or this many police stations need to be transferred to Pakistan, all of those things, right? Then division was not just restricted to the land, it was not just restricted to how many government employees will go to India or Pakistan. It was even, it is funny actually, but it was even spread to ordinary items like furniture, like books, and also the railway networks. So all of these things were also shared between the two nations. Then partition has also raised questions about India's identity, okay, India's national identity. That I told you that India wanted to remain what? Secular, right? But even in India, if Muslim League is acting as one of the party who is saying that we will protect the interest of the Muslims, then there was few parties, some political groups in India as well, apart from Congress, who said that we would actually um, go against the idea of secularism. When Pakistan is saying that we want to protect the interests of Muslims, then why is India not focusing on protecting the interests of Hindus? Okay, so again, these people also wanted power. Fine. So they were spreading their entirely different propaganda that, oh, India should become a Hindu nation, those kind of things. So this was the issue, this was the question that India's national identity was facing. That, okay, can we actually preserve our identity of being secular? So what happened was that Indian leaders, the interim government, they had to ban these organizations so that they do not um, spread this propaganda any further and cause more issues, more communal rights, more hatred into the country. Okay, so apart from banning them, Indian leaders, they rejected the idea of a religious state, that is the Hindu nation, and they adopted the principle of secularism only. They uplifted it, they kept it and maintained it. Also, when so many such violence would be seen in a large area, then it creates a big psychological impact. Okay, so the writers, the poets, the filmmakers, they were documenting all this suffering, all this misery, this pain that partition had caused. Okay, so they were writing about it. Why? Because it is important to preserve these things. so that we can look back at our actions as humans and learn from them and not repeat them in the future, right? Then, in this work that they were writing about, what were the themes? What were the things they were writing upon? They were writing about displacement, people leaving their homes and forced to live in refugee camps, the idea of alienation, people forced to leave their houses because they were treated as foreigners now, the pain of losing your loved ones, okay, and orphanhood. So orphanhood means that a child has lost all of his or her parents, so then they become a orphan. Then the psychological impact was such that the survivors, the people who had survived all this violence on both sides of the border, they described partition as a division of heart. Why? Because it is very painful. It was not just the partition of territories, but also a partition of hearts, because we lost our communities, we lost our relationships as well.